Down the road from me, there's an old hollow tree where you drop off a dollar and then you go round the bend. When you come back again, there's a jug of Mountain Dew. And I'll let that good old Mountain Dew. Hey, Motor Warriors, I didn't see you standing over there. Welcome to Knee Slapper Sunday, where every Sunday, or every other Sunday, or once a month on Sunday, or shoot, whenever I feel like it, I'm going to post a silly joke or a riddle or just something silly so that we as bikers learn to not take ourselves so seriously. What do y'all think? Well, I hope you enjoy this episode of Knee Slapper Sunday, even if it's on a Tuesday. Well, hey, Motor Warriors. You know, here in Tennessee, most of the law enforcement officers, you know, the Leos, they're all pretty good people, and as long as you are not doing something crazy stupid or being mouthy and thinking that you don't have to show your driver's license because you're a sovereign citizen or something like that, you know, then they get along, you know, everything will be all right. There's this fella, he was flying down the road on his bike and he was going too fast. I mean, too fast. State trooper saw him and pulled him over. Now, this trooper, he actually rides a bike, not on duty, but you know, he rides a bike and stuff. And so when he sees a bike doing something, you know, stupid or going way too fast, most of the time he just, you know, gives them a warning and tells them to slow down because he understands, because he rides too. Well, he pulled this guy over and he walked up and said, "What's your name?" And the guy said, "Fred." And the trooper just kind of chuckled and said, "Well, hey, Fred, what's your last name?" And he said, "Well, sir, I ain't got one." And he said, "Oh, man, come on. Everybody's got a last name. What's your last name?" He said, "No, with all due respect, sir, I don't have a last name anymore." And the trooper started to think, okay, man, I got one of those nutcases. This is not going to be fun, but I'll just try and cut him some slack and see where this goes. So he said, "Well, how did it come to be that you know, don't have a last name? Because, like I said, on your birth certificate, you have to have some kind of last name. Even if your name was Fred, I mean, you have to have some kind of last name." And he said, "Well, sir, I was born and my parents named me Fred Johnson. And I was a good kid. You know, I always studied real hard in school and helped my parents around the house and took out the trash and mowed some lawns for elderly people in the neighborhood and told them they didn't owe me a dime just because I wanted to, you know, be a good kid. And because my grades were so good and I wanted to be a doctor, they let me into medical school after I passed the exams and stuff, and I became Fred Johnson, MD. And my parents, they said they were so proud of me. And I was, you know, practicing medicine for a few years, and I started to realize that's not really what I wanted to do." And he said, "Well, what does that got to do with not having a last name, Fred?" And he said, "Well, I'm getting to that, trooper." He said, "Just give me a minute. It's kind of a long story, but I'll tell you." He said, "Well, keep talking then." And he said, "Well, when I was a kid, I had a friend of mine get in an accident on his bicycle, and he lost a tooth. And he wanted to, you know, find a dentist that could just, you know, fix it up good for him. And where we lived, you know, back in East Tennessee, there wasn't a place to have his tooth fixed." And he said, "So, you know, I got to thinking, I wanted to be a dentist when I was younger. Why am I an MD? I should be a DDS, a doctor of dental surgery." So I went to dental school, and then I became Fred Johnson, MD, DDS. And he said, "You know, I was doing that for a few years and I started to get bored." And he said, "You know, I had this receptionist that worked for me. Man, she was good looking. So her and I started to hit it off pretty good, and we started fooling around. And wouldn't you know it, that girl gave me VD. So, trooper, I became known as Fred Johnson, MD, DDS with VD." And he said, "Well, The American Dental Association found out that I was fooling around with my receptionist, and said, you know, that was unethical, and they took away my license. So I just went back to being Fred Johnson, MD, with VD. Well, the American Medical Association found out what the American Dental Association did, and they took away my license too. So I just became Fred Johnson with VD. But then, after a few more years, wouldn't you know, that VD took away my Johnson. And now I'm just Fred. Trooper laughed and told him to drive safe. Yeah! Oh, that there was a knee slapper. I tell you what.